Hello and welcome to ETAuto. I'm Nabeel Khan and I have here with me a very special guest, the new president of Society of Indian Automobile Manufacturer, Mr. Abhay Firodia. He is also one of the pioneers of Indian automobile industry and chairman of Force Motor. Welcome to ETAuto, sir. Hello. It's a great pleasure having you, sir. It's been quite a buzzing day for last 2 days. Minister has made a very strong statement about electric vehicle. How do you look at industry being ready for this?
First, let's talk about what the minister said. The minister was very clear in his statement that this change is coming. He said you have to prepare. Government wants the transition to electric mobility, and government is clear that they want alternate fuels to be considered and to be used increasingly, in preference to only diesel. And I think this is a welcome and clear policy statement. So first of all, I want to support what the minister said, and I think the industry welcomes this. This is one aspect. What is the direction of thinking? The second aspect is, if this is the direction of thinking, how do we as a nation, as a government, as industry, as stakeholders, how do we move in that direction in a manner which is constructive, which is not disruptive, and which results in achieving the end objective which we all want. Automobile industry is now gearing up in a very earnest manner with strenuous efforts, with a lot of investment, with harnessing of a lot of resources in terms of skills, manpower, technology, to transition to diesel BS6 norm. It is not an easy norm to achieve. It is all the more difficult to achieve because the time available is short. It is wrong to think that because on another engine on another continent BS6 is implemented, that it can readily be grafted onto another engine. This is not correct.
So you operate in both vehicle manufacturing, you are into component space also. So you understand the entire change very well, and you will have to implement at both the end. How do you look at the complexity when we talk about BS6 as well as electric vehicle? It is too quick a time, 12, 13 years.
No, first let's talk of BS6. BS6 development normally will take 5 to 6 years minimum, because you need special engines which have combustion characteristics with high pressure injection, which means then again strengthened blocks, heads. The whole development cycle is several years. It involves design, it involves tooling, it involves testing. Then you require that special injection system, fuel injection system, and which has to be grafted on this, which has to be reliable on it. And you need after treatment, new and complex after treatment strategies. You will be surprised to know that in Euro 6 or BS6, the volume of the after treatment equipment, which is filters or the SCR devices, that volume is nearly the same volume as that of the engine. So it has to be packaged in the vehicle. The SCR must be placed close to the engine. If it is not close to the engine, the exhaust gas that comes out cools by the time it reaches the SCR. If it is at the back of the vehicle, then effectiveness goes out. The amount of fuel that will have to be burned to heat the SCR will destroy the fuel economy of the vehicle. So all this is evolved by trial and error, by experimentation, by optimization, which involves very accurate, very expensive, very specialized equipment, test benches, test vehicles. So this process takes time. So allow me to finish. Once this is done, then the robustness in different climatic conditions, different altitudes, different applications, different load conditions has to be established. It takes a year and a half to run a large number of vehicles through this testing. So the costs involved, the resources involved, the time involved cannot be shortcutted. It has to take that time. It's like growing a tree. You can't say, okay, get me a tree tomorrow morning. It has to grow. Now coming to alternate fuels. Alternate fuels technology is known, but are alternate fuels available? And if they are available, then applicating those fuels on a particular vehicle to adapt the engines, a similar program has to be gone through. So it is not something that you can switch to alternate fuels immediately. But if the government has, as the minister said, made up its mind that we need to go to alternate fuel, then I would say the government and the industry should sit together and work out that we have to do this in 3 years. We have to do this in this segment. We have to do this for this application. Then the government will take care of the making availability of the fuels at the appropriate place, and the industry will take care of making available the necessary engines and vehicles, etc. So this is joint working which is involved, and it cannot be just simply in directional terms stated. A project is required for it. Electric vehicles is completely a different kettle of fish. Electric vehicles eliminate the engine and eliminate the gearbox. You have electric motor. Electric motor drives the wheels. Now whether it drives through an axle or whether it drives directly is a matter of engineering design and detail. But this means that the conventional drivetrain, which is the engine, the gearbox, the axle, this is eliminated. If this is eliminated, then you need to substitute it with electrotransmission. The key in electrotransmission, which is going to determine the success, is the battery. The battery is the storage device through which power is available to run the motor which will run the vehicle. In basic concept terms, the first electric car was shown in an industrial fair in Germany 125 years ago. So it is not as if this is a new invention. This is known. Why did it not materialize so far? For the simple reason that the weight of the batteries, of the technology and the chemistry that was available till recently was extraordinarily high. So you can run an electric vehicle, but the battery weight prohibits you from putting any passengers or goods in the vehicle. So the vehicle could only go by itself. Yeah. And if you said, no, I will put passengers and weight, then the range was limited. Then you could go maybe 20 kilometers or 10 kilometers, which is not practical. With the development of new generation batteries, what is called a lithium ion battery. The lithium ion battery is a battery with a very high power density. That means in a, let me say 500 gram weight of battery, the amount of energy that can be stored is many times higher than what can be stored in a lead acid battery. So this is an expensive device. It is a sensitive device. These batteries need cooling. They have a certain life. That life is dependent also on how they are used. So the effectiveness of electromobility will depend not on the motor, which is a known technology, on the controller, which is a tackleable technology, on integration or packaging in the vehicle that can be done, but on the cost, the reliability and the availability of the battery. Batteries are evolving, rapidly evolving, and in addition to lithium ion, new technologies like sodium ion, etc. are coming. So just as lithium ion cost has come dramatically down, if sodium ion, which is supposed to be even more efficient, comes in and becomes a reliable technology, then maybe this becomes the way to go. Today, battery cost is so high that nobody can expect a common man's vehicle or a small car to be viable economically as an electric vehicle. Okay, there are people who will say, I still want one. Just as people say, I want a luxury car. That's wonderful. But for the real transition to happen, to get to electric mobility, battery availability, battery cost must become reasonable. That is happening. Whether it will happen in 3 years or 5 years or 7 years or 10 years is difficult to predict. But this disruptive technology will come and we will all move to electromobility. To develop electric vehicles also will take time. Even if the technology is generally understood, it will still require packaging in the vehicle, it will still require for each vehicle a different control electronics to be made. It will require the vehicle to be reliable. So, you involve testing of 1.5 or 2 years. It may fail, so you have to modify, then test again. So, these cycles take several years. Electromobility can be introduced in India by Indian manufacturers within a short time, provided we are clear what the government policy is. If the government says, I want batteries which are swappable, that means you use a battery, then go to a certain station, hand over the battery, fit another one. This is possible in theory. In practice, how well it works has to be worked out, and for that, government and industry will need to work closely together. Automotive industry is ready to work closely with this. But it is again a matter of the battery being available and time being available to adapt it. And that time is not an excuse for the industry to avoid going to electrical vehicles. That time is the legitimate time required to create that application. So, what I want to say is, automotive industry is happy to go to BS6. We have limited time, but we will make it. We are happy to go to alternate fuels. It is work. We have to work out specific time plan, whether you want methanol, whether you want biodiesel, with what alternate fuel, CNG, LNG. We have to specify. And so far as electric vehicles are concerned, certainly we can go to electric vehicle. We want to go to electric vehicle. We recognize that electric vehicles is the future. But for that, the development cycle has to be properly managed and has to be managed collaboratively. In the meanwhile, other stakeholders should not be making disruptive noises. Often people like you in the media who are very knowledgeable, you start saying automobile industry is not paying attention and there is this and there is that. Don't do it. What you need to look at is the logic that we want to get there. Let us find the best way to do it together. Let us create the conditions for doing it well, rather than there being an ordinance and there being a court order, and this creates disruptions. Industry and government and society have to work in sync for best results to happen.
It really looks enormous, work that has to be done. You just said that it is going to take at least 5 years, but we do not have 5 years to move to BS6. In such a scenario, what are the alternatives available for the automotive industry, Indian automotive industry? How do you think we can achieve? You just said we can achieve, but we need 5 years, but we don't have 5 years.
For BS6, we have agreed that we will be there by 2020. This is agreed. And BS6 is cooking now for more than a year. So, I think it is tight. It is not going to be easy. It is going to be sleepless nights for a lot of people, not just in the automotive industry, but in the component industry, in the testing agencies. Suddenly hundreds of vehicles will come for testing and certification. So, those agencies will be under pressure. There will be a queue. Whether I should test this vehicle first or that vehicle first. So, there is going to be pressure, but I don't see BS6 as a crisis. I see it as an interesting and solid, enormous challenge, but industry is ready to meet it. So far as electric vehicles are concerned, we need a policy format and we need to work that format out jointly with the government. Swappable batteries or non-swappable batteries. What chemistry, what technology, which vehicles, what application, what will be the infrastructure required for electric battery charging, whether government will set it up, whether petroleum companies will set it up, whether you want on-board chargers or off-board chargers, what should be interfaces, what is the safety standard that will be applicable, what are the specifications and norms. This industry is a highly complex industry. You cannot oversimplify it. What often happens is people oversimplify. Electric गाड़ी आना चाहिए.
Simple बोल दिया.
It is easier said than done. That doesn't mean it can't be done. But to do it, you need the proper systems, procedures, standards, regulations, testing facilities.
Don't you see there is a gap? The minister is so, Nitin Gadkari ji just said that so strongly that we will bulldoze all the petrol, diesel car. But when we look at the actions, we do not have the roadmap. Just you mentioned clear roadmap. It's been quite some time. We have a policy for electric vehicle in India, 2-3 years, more than that I think. But we do not have categorical or timeline. By then we will have this policy, this kind of collaboration. Why the industry is not pushing for this, that the government should give you the clear timeline and clear roadmap? How do we achieve?
I personally strongly believe, as I know Mr. Gadkari's track record and his achievements, that he is a very clear-headed person. His statement that he wants these alternate fuels reflects his long-standing views. They are recognized, understood and accepted. His desire that electromobility should be supported is supported by the automobile industry as well. So there is no ambiguity in direction. I would say, having said this, one would expect that the various ministries concerned, it's not just Mr. Gadkari's ministry, but it is also Ministry of Heavy Industry, it is also the Petroleum Ministry, it is also the Power Ministry, and organizations like Niti Aayog, which determine the shape of the policy for the country for the future. So all of them have to work with the industry, have to work with the component industry, have to work with other stakeholders to evolve a roadmap. And that is the key. If we can do that collaboratively, the results will be better. If we do it in isolation, that means industry is thinking of one thing, government is thinking of another thing, then there will have to be conflict resolution, which is unfortunately happened in the past, which should not happen now. So I am very confident, given the track record of Mr. Gadkari, he will see to it that this kind of a collaborative thinking happens, a resolution is arrived at, and everybody is then pursuing that to achieve the best result.
So if we talk about government support to the industry, which are the core area and what are the steps government should take for the industry so that they get into the mode that they start really working into electric vehicle?
Well, the first thing that has to be done is that the government should constitute a dialogue with the industry for the electromobility. Today, a lot of thinking is happening within the government and it is very welcome. But the level of dialogue with the industry can be intensified given the urgency expressed by the government. And I am sure that if such a dialogue is held transparently, all aspects are understood, resolution and a way forward can be found without too much delay.
So we do not have much of indigenous, technology. No manufacturer almost have for electric vehicles. So how the Indian companies are trying to grab this opportunity and how they will do it? Is it going to be mostly joint venture or technical alliance? What it is going to be? How the shape is?
As I explained, there are 4 important elements in the electric vehicle. One is the battery, and this is the one which is the key element. Battery is understood, but it has to be available at a reasonable price in order that an electric vehicle can compete with a non-electric fossil fuel vehicle like a diesel or a petrol or a gas vehicle. So that is one element. It is very clear that battery manufacture is not something automobile companies will do. Battery companies who have special knowledge of the chemistry of batteries, of the construction of batteries, they will do it. And there are large companies of this type, but they will have to scale up dramatically. If today the size of the industry on a scale of 0 to 10 is 1, they will have to go to maybe 10 in order to ensure that hundreds of thousands of vehicles can be supplied with battery. The second aspect is the motor and the drive. Automobile industry and the electrical motor industry in India will collaborate to produce motors, and it is not rocket science. This knowledge is well established in India. This will be available in time. It does not take more than 2 to 3 years to develop a drive system which is electric. The third element is the element of control systems. To manage the electric traction of the vehicle, which means to regulate the motor and to make sure the speeds are right and the recapturing of the braking power is done properly, you need an electronic system and power electricals. These are also possible to be developed in India with Indian knowledge, with Indian software, with Indian technology, but it takes 2 to 3 years of experimentation to mature. This can be done. The last element is integration of all this. It is good to say, I have a good battery, I have a good motor, I know the control. How do you install it in the vehicle? At what voltage will you run the current? How do you do the cabling? What connectors are required? What is the reliability of those connectors? They should not fail. In an electric vehicle, failure of connectors and ruptures in the cabling system can lead to very dangerous fires. The same is applicable to battery. The battery must be cooled. The battery must be protected. So all of this has to be engineered. It is not a question of knowledge alone. It's a question of time. It's a question of experimentation. It's a question of evolving a proper design or trying it out or maturing that design, bringing it to production, proving it in production, and being able to maintain it. If I buy an electric car or you buy an electric car or a two-wheeler or whatever it is, it may work for 5 days and thereafter it will start giving you trouble. You will not be happy because it is your right to and you expect reliability. How is reliability built in? It is not a function of my intention or your intention. It's a function of the robustness of the design, that robustness having been established as a result of experimentation, trials, tests, closed loop activity of correction, testing again, improvement, testing again. This is what takes time. So we have to have a roadmap for this. I am sure Mr. Gadkari is an outstandingly visionary man, and he will be able to push the government into creating this dialogue so that we can all work together.
Coming back to auto component industry, there are several companies where they are still their earning comes from the obsolete old technology, and with this big shift happening, do you see that there will be existential crisis for some companies? And if they want to remain afloat, what should they do? Where the opportunity they should look for when they want to work in future as well?
The greatest danger is not for auto component manufacturers, it is for dealers. It is for maintenance workshops. Today, the number of people employed in the country in garages which maintain engines and gearboxes is millions. Few years after the introduction of electromobility, they will become idle. The maintenance cost of an electric automobile is expected to be 1% of the maintenance cost of the IC engine automobile, 1%. So you are talking about a huge escape of jobs. This is a big issue. Component manufacturers will have issues. Those who are making drivetrain components will have to work to adapt themselves to electromobility components. Whether all can do it is a matter of conjecture. I don't believe that a full transition is possible. So it has to be managed in a as painless manner as possible. So far as the automobile manufacturers are concerned, the automobile manufacturers will work to integrate electromobility devices in current or new vehicle platforms. Every few years, the automobile manufacturers bring in a new platform. So the next platforms will cater for electromobility. And this will happen.
So, sir, look, current market share condition that we look at in India, one player have 50%. With this big shift coming up, do you see major ups and downs in the market share in the automobile industry, especially passenger vehicle sales?
It may happen. It may happen, and it depends on the agility, the technical competence, the adaptability, not just of the automobile manufacturer, but his established supply chain, his engineering infrastructure, to be able to succeed in this transition. So, some will succeed better than others. And this is what real life is about. You cannot say that I want to maintain the same proportion forever. Competition is important. Such disruptive changes give a new color to the competition. Let the competent organization win. And I think the automobile industry is open for it. They are not saying protect us, save us, we are dying. No, they are not saying that. They are saying we are ready to innovate, we are ready to improve, we are ready to modernize, we want to tackle that. We want to use that opportunity to become global players. This is a crisis which we can convert into an opportunity. To do that, let us work together, create a path for transformation of the electricity industry, that means the battery industry, of the component industry, of the automotive industry, of the aftermarket industry. We have to look after all these. And this cannot be done by automobile companies alone, cannot be done by component companies alone. This is where the whole society has to work together.
Last question, how do you look at the job market for automobile, impact on jobs in automobile industry with all this shift happening? You just talked about dealership and workshop. Overall job scenario, how do you look at it?
You see, there is no denying that technology is progressing so rapidly that in the new world as it is emerging, the jobs will be different kind of jobs. There will not necessarily be a reduction in jobs, because as we saw, after automation came, after computers came, initially the bank unions were against computers. They said, it will kill us. Don't bring computers. We want to remain in the 19th century. But computers have made banks efficient. Computers have made consumers happy. And computers have created more new jobs than the old jobs that were lost because of the growth and development of the industry. Electromobility can have a similar impact. The person who is repairing a car can become a software person. The person who is selling a car can go into selling electricity. So, the nature of the job might change, the location of the job might change. The person who is doing the job may be the next generation person. Number of jobs will change much more than they will reduce. And if they are to grow, we have to bring prosperity, we have to bring greater employability, we have to bring newer skills. So the task is going to be reskilling, the task is going to be growth, and not so much just finding existing jobs. Existing jobs will change. In today's age, do you have a job for steam engine driver? Do you have a job for a sais for a horse? There were lakhs of horse riders and saises in India only 100 years ago. In my childhood, I remember in every city there were Tongas. Where have they gone? Where are the Tongawalas? Can you say, no, you protect the Tonga? You can't.
So shape will change.
New jobs will come. Are our people capable of doing the new job? That is the job. That is the task. Are we creating enough new jobs? That is the challenge. So we have to work towards that aim. And if we start blaming each other, the automobile industry is not doing this, component industry is not doing that, government is not doing this, government is not doing that, then we will only be discussing things which are not resultant.
Thank you so much, sir. You have explained so nicely that even the common person can understand what this transition means and how it is going to evolve.